committee members and participants. We are now live.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a continuation of our budget hearing from this morning, and we are about to begin. Mr. McDermott, who is the first panel to testify?
Mark Wheeler from the Office of Innovation and Technology.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Happy to be here.
So you can state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Very good. Good afternoon, Councilmember Jones, Council President Clark, and members of City Council. I'm Mark Wheeler, Chief Information Officer. Joining me today are Sandra Carter, Chief Operating Officer, Steve Robertson, Chief of Staff, Chris Donato, Chief Financial Officer, and Andrew Buss, Deputy CIO for Innovation Management. I am pleased to provide testimony on the Office of Innovation and Technology's Fiscal Year 2024 operating budget, and I thank you all for the opportunity today to take your questions. The proposed Fiscal Year 24 general fund budget totals $126,992,826. That's an increase of $4,505,671 over the FY23 estimated obligation levels. This net increase reflects increased fundings for digital equity, the new emergency 911 computer-aided dispatch system, as well as support for the capital-funded business applications and infrastructure projects. I have a short presentation to share with council members today on the video surveillance program, for which OIT plays a role of technology partner to the police department and streets. If I may share the screen, I can start that presentation. Please let me know if you can see that, Councilmember Jones.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Just one moment on my side. Before I begin with the VSS presentation, I would like to thank the hardworking professionals of OIT for their efforts to provide the highest levels of service to city government over the last few years. The pandemic highlighted the value in IT in ways that we could never have predicted. And as OIT shifted, roughly 28,000 employees to remote work, virtual meetings, and helped our departments move more services online, the value and necessity of information technology to government and to citizens became more apparent than ever. OIT teams have gone above and beyond to support the departments and service delivery and to ensure that our systems remain secure and to help address the needs of the most disadvantaged citizens unable to afford what is now a fundamental utility, which is broadband internet. And with this, we created new programs like PHL Connected to assist those citizens. At any given time, OIT collectively is managing over 60 major projects and then dozens of smaller initiatives across government. These range in scope and cost from the Opal project, which you heard about earlier from CAO Tipton, which is a multi-system replacement for financials and procurement. This has a combined operating and capital budget of over $150 million. And we manage much smaller projects of scale, but one that's extremely critical importance to the life and safety of our firefighters, a $210,000 implementation of a personnel accountability system. Our OIT teams have committed the time that's needed to problem solve and to find solutions to many pandemic-induced service disruptions and increase security risks. Of note is the completion of the Philadelphia Public Safety Building in 2022. This is where central OIT and the police IT teams face waves of supply chain and vendor coordination challenges, yet they collectively delivered a state-of-the-art data center, a new joint E911 operations center, and they migrated dozens of public safety critical applications from the old police headquarters into more resilient and modern platforms. I must note that this was done nearly on time and on budget. Quite a feat for government because we're often over budget and over time on things. And we did this with the help of many partners for which we are incredibly grateful. OIT is not just IT. We are teams of procurement, budget, HR, and project management professionals, OIT staffs, creatives and UX designers, customer support and innovation specialists, and OIT is also field equipment installers, telecom experts, admin assistants, and the PHL GovTech team who's helping us out right now. All of these are important roles to enabling IT, in the addition to our network, cybersecurity, software and data engineers, our GIS and business analysts. I want to thank each member of the OIT teams and all of the technology leaders from all around city government at various departments and offices who work with OIT to make up the federated technology ecosystem of the city. Collectively, your work does not go unnoticed. I am truly grateful for everything you've done to improve the technology services and the data security of city government and for our citizens. And in closing, I want to thank my leadership team for always supporting and mentoring their staff. And I especially want to thank CFO Chris Donato and his team for meticulously preparing OIT's budget each year. Thank you, Chris, for keeping OIT on track each and every year with our budgets, our procurements, and our spending. And now I'll proceed with the video surveillance presentation with the assistance of Sandra Carter, COO. So the Philadelphia video surveillance system, its primary purpose is to capture video in the public rights of way, those are streets and sidewalks, for the investigation of crimes by the police after they are committed. This is a timeline of the entire system going back from its pilot around 2006 and the few cameras that were installed at that time. It was transitioned over completely from vendors to city staff. And over the years, we've been incrementally increasing the camera counts, performing upgrades to the video management system itself, and then doing special projects like the safe play zones, which I'll talk about in just a moment. The business owner primarily of the VSS is the police department. They determine the location of the cameras, the quantity of cameras that go into each location, and then the frame of view for those cameras. The video management system and who accesses it and how it's used is all under police control. So they use the camera footage for the criminal investigations, and then they will task OIT with alerts about camera malfunctions for replacements or repairs and where to install or move cameras. So OIT is the technology provider. As I've said, our primary role is that installation and movement, but we encompasses all of the work around that, including site surveys to determine if the camera can be placed at a very specific location and at what costs. And then we maintain the budgets for the hardware and the software of the system. I just wanted to show everyone who is the VSS team. They work under the Unified Communications Program at OIT under the leadership of Sherry Leak, who reports up to Sandra Carter, our Chief Operating Officer. Here's some information I know that's of interest to Council is the number of counts. Currently, all uses for PVSS cameras combined, we're at a count of 1,220. This could change and increase even starting next week. There are 747 cameras scattered around the city for which there is no intended use. And when I say intended use, Council was gracious enough to grant us several $1 million in fiscal year budget 23 for cameras to be put up around what was termed safe play zones. This included rec centers and also Philadelphia school district sites. The streets department also funds and pays for their own cameras and does some of their own installation or works with vendors to do that installation. They have a combination of wired and wireless cameras. So they've dedicated over 250 to illegal dumping hotspots. And they also have cameras set up specifically for viewing traffic intersections. All of these cameras are viewable by police. When you the VMS system also has the ability to take in feeds from other video management systems. These are the ones that are currently connected, are displayed here in the graphic. That's about 5,204 different federated cameras. This gives the police over 6,500 different camera views from all across the city for criminal investigations. Specific to safe play zones, there are those designated to the recreation centers. There are 14 different sites. You can see those arrayed around the map here. We have 19 different sites for school district locations. Those have been planned. We have not begun installation on those. Since this was a capital funded program, we needed to wait for those specific capital dollars to be certified, which happened earlier this spring. And OIT has queued up all of the purchase order requests for the equipment needed to begin that installation immediately.
Can you pause for a
Sure.
second?
Yes, sir.
On this screen? I want to emphasize for the record that the safe zones in recreation centers came at the insistence of member Cindy Betts. A couple years ago, she put her foot down and said that these cameras should be installed at our rec centers, and I'm thankful and wanted to put that on the record. The second side of the cameras in and around schools has become increasingly apparent for me when you look at the shooting of Roxborough, which was captured on camera. If you look at the shooting that happened at Overbrook, it was captured on camera. And so we appreciate particularly all cameras, but these two sets of cameras are of high priority. Please continue.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. We are grateful to Council's interest in funding of these cameras, and we did make it a priority working with police to understand where the locations were and the managing director's office, and to get this installed as soon as possible. Many questions come up about how camera installation requests are managed. It is the police department that receives them from multiple sectors of government, including city council, even citizens coming to the precincts. And they manage all of that in relationship to their information about crime statistics and hotspots. And then they will direct OIT where to place the cameras and in what quantity. I just want to give you a sense of the budgets in that FY22-23 timeframe. That's when we got the dedicated funding for the safe play zones. We also received additional funding to help us do not one, but two upgrades to the video management system. So now we're at a capacity for that system to manage 3,600 cameras coming in as direct feeds. We also needed additional bucket trucks so we could accelerate the number of installations, but also continue to maintain the cameras. And then we got additional funding for a total of 100 VSS cameras over that time frame. Now in FY24, we're back to more of a standard amount of capital dollars that allows us to procure 50 VSS cameras per year, plus the fiber and the ancillary network equipment to support that. So on the operating side, again, in FY23, we received additional dollars to help us now hire 4 more staff. That would bring us up to 12. We're currently hiring for those 4 additional technicians now. That also pays for, the operating budget pays for the Pico power charges and pole leases, the Pico make-ready work that we would have to do on the pole or around the site. There's a permit involved there. And then there's ancillary equipment and fiber costs. And then our operating budget supports the maintenance of the VMS and existing cameras already purchased with capital dollars. Our FY24 is reflective of those same costs. There's been a slight reduction in the previous fiscal, or in the current fiscal year. We've had some inflationary increases, and we did buy some additional licensing with the video management system in anticipation of greater capacity. This is a quick snapshot of typical installation costs. So while a single bundle for a single view camera is $4,558, when you build in some of the bracketing and additional costs, cabling and networking, that goes up to an estimated $11,855. If we have to run fiber aerially or underground, that's typically $1 a foot, and an average project that requires a significant amount of fiber is around 10,000 feet. So we're looking at 10,000 there. And then the estimated make-ready costs or permitting costs run us over $4,000. Then there are the general annual costs for the Genetech video management system. And then a typical project is 4 staff. So we calculated the cost of just the 4 staff and not the 8 that we're working with now. There is a governance board to help OIT, police, and all of the parties involved do some planning. This was recently reconvened last year by the various stakeholders and departments and partners who have an interest in making sure that this program is successful. The membership includes police, the managing director's office, streets, Otis, commerce, and of course OIT. It's convened by the MDO, and our current objectives are to coordinate on projects and the capital budgeting that needs to be done, and setting both policies and priorities for the program. And one of those policies is to develop a video surveillance and data compliance set of guidelines with the law department. There are future needs for the program. I've got these in 2 buckets. One that you can tell, and from the many questions that I've received over the last year about the VSS, that you have different partners doing different amounts of work in the program itself. Streets is able to procure its own cameras and do installations. PPD takes requests from all over government for installations. We think a dedicated staffing at an MDO level to help us with overall governance and to help plan for and lead the strategic planning for the growth of the program and help define what should be the target goals for installations per year would be very helpful, as well as a more transparent request and tracking process. So all of the partners involved could see where request is if there is any holdup, is that in the requisition of the equipment, or is it some installation issue that we're having in the field? When it comes to the network itself, we do need to do a full evaluation, and Sandra Carter and her teams are preparing to do that. We have some budget dollars set aside. We need to understand fully where the network needs to be upgraded. So every time we add significant amounts of cameras, we do degrade the ability of the entire video management system to manage all of that throughput. So you can imagine when that degrades, sometimes you would not be able to capture a vehicle moving very quickly and get its license plate information from the imagery. So we need the network to be as performative as the expectations for the use of the camera system for investigations. So we would expect in the next budget round and cycle to have a capital budget plan to address those needs and replacements. So I've covered the equipment issue in full. I will say that we do think, or we would recommend, that there should be a discussion about the evaluation of the program for potential over surveillance. At some point, we will be able to get past this gun violence epidemic that we have. And when we're there, questions may arise of, why do we have so many cameras in some neighborhoods? Is that still necessary? Should we have some type of parity? And again, that comes back to the strategic plan and growth of the program and what type of target goals. I'm not here to recommend those. I'm just calling out that we feel it would be appropriate for the city to have some perspective on over surveillance and evaluating the performance of the program. And with that, I'll end the slide presentation, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Well, thank you for that presentation, and I appreciate our meeting to explain to a layperson what our goals and objectives are. What I would like to do, because I'm going to turn it over to Member Gaudier and to Member Richardson, who are teed up, but help me to understand, and Member Thomas went with us, and, along with Member Gilmore Richardson, over to Camden, where we looked at acoustical recognition equipment that was paired with cameras. In the city of Philadelphia, are we planning to do that? And if so, tell us when and where.
It's my understanding that the police department does have an acoustic gunshot detection set of sensors in use and under evaluation. I would ask that specific questions about how that's being set up and utilized within the department be directed at the police. OIT doesn't have a direct involvement in the setup of that program itself. The technology leads at the DIVIC were able to lead that, and that leadership and use of an evaluation of acoustic gunshot detection at the police department goes back to the early teens.
Thank you for that response, and we will make note to call back the police asked about that. By way of what you said about slowing down of the system as we add cameras, is that a question of bandwidth?
It's a question of, in a sense, yes. There are items called network switches. They really control the throughput. While fiber can have an infinite amount of throughput on it, and the VMS system is, capable of viewing now 3,600 different camera feeds. In certain locations around the city, we have older switches that do slow down the throughput itself. Those need to be found and replaced. We have a good sense of where some of those are, but we need to do a full survey to replace those.
So on equity when it comes to technology, one of the pet peeves I've had, not with you, but with the city as a whole, is that we really need to hardwire, make available more technology as it relates to our libraries and recreation centers. During the pandemic, those were some of the few places that parents and students could find their way into a collective environment where they could receive education. So for things like teleconferencing that could deal with that, I was wondering if there was a request made to you by the rec department and by the library to upgrade our technology in that way.
Yes, thanks for that question. That does play into the digital equity work that OIT has been actively involved in and leading in city government going back before the pandemic, but for which we did formalize quite a bit of that work after the spring of 2020. We are currently looking at the different grants that are available through the bipartisan infrastructure law that would allow us to do some work at the different rec centers. The goal would be to elevate all of the rec centers into what we call community anchor institutions. That's high capacity broadband enabled both wired and wirelessly in those buildings and campus. We've been working closely now for well over a year with the Office of Children and Families and Parks and Recreation to identify the first sites that we would work on if and when we get that funding. There has been some work done already through the Operations Transformation Fund to help a small number of the rec centers upgrade their computing equipment in the computer labs. As you might be aware, there are Parks and Rec computer labs that they maintain themselves, and then there are computer labs that are part of the bigger PHL, I'm sorry, I'm losing the term. It's part of the greater computer network that we have that is both at city sites and non-city sites. So we're very hopeful that some of that funding will come our way. The challenge we have with the BIL funding for digital equity is that it is quite often geared towards the rural, unserved, underserved areas. Philadelphia having a fully built out physical environment by different telecom providers, it presents a real challenge to us. But I think working with some consultants that we're bringing on board now, we're going to make the best case that we have that there is an equity issue here with the rec centers not being able to fulfill the role that you just described, Councilmember Jones. And we're going to push that. And we've been trying to develop very good relationships with the PA Broadband Authority staff. We had them at the city on site last December. We gave them a tour of 2 recreation centers. And I want to thank the staff of Office of Children and Families and Parks and Rec for hosting that and doing a really wonderful job and giving a sales pitch as to why these rec centers are critical community centers and need to be access points for broadband.
Thank you for that response. Chair recognizes Member Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Wheeler.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Guthier.
First, thank you so much to you and your team for everything that you do to keep our city connected and safe on a daily basis. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
I have a few questions for you. First, what is the status of the city's negotiations with the Verizon franchise agreement?
Sure. I'm going to turn that question over to Steve Robertson, our Chief of Staff. He's been leading up those negotiations. Steve, would you like to reply to Councilmember Guthier?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Hello, Councilmember Guthier and Council
Gaudier.
President.
I only let
Gaudier.
the majority leader call me Gaudier.
Sorry about that. And good afternoon, the rest of the members of council. Steve Robertson, Chief of Staff, Office of Innovation and Technology. The current status of the Verizon negotiation for the franchise agreement is that we are fully engaged, the city, with OIT and the law department are fully engaged regularly with Verizon right now. The way the renewal works is it usually starts 3 years prior to the expiration of the current franchise agreement, which is in 2024 for Verizon. So we've been engaged with Verizon and opened a public comment period back in 2022 in July. And we've regularly been meeting with Verizon since the beginning of the year, every 2 weeks. And they are about a 3.5 hour, 4 hour negotiation session every other week.
Okay, thank you so much. And can you describe how OIT is interfacing with other city departments, such as law and MDO during these negotiations?
Sure. I mean, we right now, because we're at the very beginning of kind of framing out the terms for the franchise agreement, it's mainly OIT and law. When we get to what we call a settled term sheet, where we both have agreement from Verizon side and the city side, then we'll engage the rest of the city partners like MDO. Mark does update the Chief Administrative Officer, Stephanie Tipton, on the franchise renewal progress, and that's how it's filtered up. But at this point, it's a lot of legal wrangling over terms. So it's mainly the law department. OIT there is kind of the technical consultant. We have an outside consultant that participates in the negotiations, a cable consultant that does franchise renewals across the country. So once that kind of filters or funnels down into what we call a term sheet, then it will be something that's shared across the city for all the stakeholders in the city.
Okay, thank you. Has the law department or OIT had any discussions with Verizon regarding public access, education, and government channels or PEG financial support? Sure.
I mean, what you referred to, public access, education, and government access, traditionally known as PEG collectively, is a very, very instrumental part of the entire franchise negotiation. PEG access and PEG grants are one of the few things that a local franchising authority like the City of Philadelphia can ask for in a franchise agreement. So obviously that's a central part of the ongoing negotiations. Okay. Has there been a discussion at this point about a specific funding amount for PEG thus far? There has. I would rather not disclose too much of that publicly, obviously, because we're in the middle of the negotiation about that very issue with Verizon. I would not want to risk compromising the city's position now or any future position we might take by mentioning any kind of specific amount or anything from the city side, but I will share with you that the city will be advocating for as much as possible in the form of PEG access or PEG grants that we can. Okay, and I know we have many partners in the city that count on this funding. Do we see any hurdles towards getting an amount that would be supportive of these partners that are offering a lot of public access information and education? There are always hurdles, some bigger than others. The cable industry is changing. The way video is delivered is changing from traditional cable to over the top. So a potential hurdle is the length of any agreement, meaning the term. That would obviously decrease the amount of overall PEG support that we would get in a franchise agreement. But I mean, PEG is in the conversation. It's not like PEG grants would be are ruled out or there's no discussion about them. That is in the conversation. It will continue to be in the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. And if it's okay with you, we will reach out after the hearing. We just love to be in the loop about how things are going.
Sure, and I'm sure through Mark, obviously we'd be willing to share updates with you as the progress moves along in those discussions with Verizon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Member Goody. I appreciate you. Chair recognizes Kathy Gilmore Richardson, Member of Council.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, and thank you to OIT for all of your work, and thank you for acknowledging all of the hardworking professionals across city government who do this work day in and day out. We certainly appreciate your work. And I too want to thank you for meeting with my office in advance of these hearings, for being responsive to the letters that we all have sent so that we can better communicate and learn and understand the work that we're all doing. So I just want to say thank you for that. You had outlined in the documents that you provided to my office back in January that of the 148 positions in OIT, I think only about 32 of them are civil service positions. I just wanted to sort of get this on the record. If you could explain why OIT has that percentage of exempt positions, like the 32 out of the 148.
Yes. Steve, if you want to chime in and help me out here, because typically the need for an exec position starts with an examination of all available civil service titles. We look at the exact nature of the role that's being requested and the responsibility and technical skill sets. If we're unable to find a civil service position that meets that role, that's when we would typically create the exempt role. And one of the reasons for that tends to be that the ever-changing and fast pace of technology does require skill sets that are more immediate and emerging, and maybe more specific, and they haven't been able to keep pace with the civil service civil service designations themselves. Steve, if there's anything I've missed there, please chime in.
And I guess really my question too is, like, in your department's perspective, which provision of the civil service regulations is relevant when classifying the vast majority of your positions as exempt?
I don't think I know that one, Steve. Is that something we can answer, or do we have to get back to the council member?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody from OHR or Labor's on the call, but I would defer to them, and I'm not sure, and maybe we can clarify the question a little bit.
Okay, so how do you all determine if a position is exempt?
Go ahead. It's kind of what Mark alluded to earlier. If we have a resource need within the organization, our first approach is to see if there's a civil service position that addresses that resource need. If there's not, then we create an exempt position so that we can recruit for that role. And frequently, and currently, there's civil service positions have not kept pace with technology. It's a little difficult. I mean, that's not that it's anybody's fault that hasn't happened. It's just that technology changes so swiftly that civil service positions and roles have not kept up with the demand for technology resources. A great example more recently, I think we used with your office when we previously spoke, was like a cloud engineer or a cloud architect. Those don't exist in civil service right now, and they're in high demand right now. Cloud is a kind of the pathway to the future for IT organizations.
Right. So that was a good, I think, distinction, because in OIT's Department Services group, Some of the civil service positions include like a network support associate or specialist, a network administrator, a local area network administrator, a programmer analyst, a programmer analyst supervisor, or programmer analyst project leader. But then some of the exempt positions are like applications administrator, business analyst, data analyst, data warehouse administrator, and data warehouse quality assurance analyst. So you understand what I'm saying as far as someone who actually reads the specs. Like I literally go on the city website and you can go, it's, the part that you can go on under OHR and you can read the specs for all the different positions and the point when all of that. So can you just explain what the difference is between, like, for example, those positions that will require some to be civil service and then others to be exempt? And I get it that technology, was moving faster than, we can update, specifications for jobs and job descriptions in city government. But like, how do you make that determination?
Yeah, I think it's something that you alluded to just then, council member. If the job responsibilities and the skill set within an existing civil service job spec match what the resource need is, we will certainly obviously use a civil service position to fill that need. What we see is a lot of the civil service specs currently don't have that higher level advanced skill sets that we need for some of these positions. So that's why we create the exempt job description, and we try to get the resource through an exempt position.
Got it. But I guess the question is, do you all ever perform any type of analysis or any kind of evaluation on who could be moved to civil service?
Actually, I think what happens more often in our experience is that current civil service employees are taking leaves of absence from civil service and moving into higher skilled positions that we have available, which happen to be exempt. I imagine there is overlap. If you look at job descriptions, there tend to be overlap, but when you look precisely at the skill set that's needed for a particular job, they're usually not apples to apples, and they're usually not at a level where it's as advanced as the resource that we're looking for.
Got you. So let me ask this last set on this, and then I'll move on and if you don't have all of the answers today, I really would love to have something to come back to us in writing, and then we can have additional like sort of discourse and conversation about this at a later time, because you may not have, the exact answer today. But I'll give you another example. In the OIT Unified Communications Group, you have like IT platform engineer, IT network engineer, technical support specialist, and video surveillance systems field technician. They're all exempt positions. But then in the same realm, cable television administrator, communications audio visual systems crew chief, comm system manager, and electronic technician group leader, they're all civil service. I mean, like, you understand, it's hard. Is there any way for you all to explain what the difference is between those positions that require some to be civil service and others to be exempt? Because, based on the classification, it sort of depends on, I guess, their role and what they can do and what they can't do.
Yeah,
Let me I can also take a stab at that in the sense that the civil service specifications did not have the technical skills or allow for the type of technical skills and field work we were looking for. So the exempt rules were created to address that very specific need. And as Steve said, there are ceilings to civil service titles and the number of steps that you can go through in terms of salaries. And in some cases, employees are looking for career path growth, and we would like to retain them. I mean, the biggest, as we all know, the biggest problem is both recruitment and retention. So giving pathways to staff to move up and forward and recognizing the work that they put in on their own education and training is something that we've done with exempt roles. So it has, in many cases, been also a retention opportunity. And I'd say if you'd like to hear firsthand from those individuals, we'd be more than happy to, host a meeting and have both civil service and exempt staff be able to speak with you, unfiltered, without supervisors in the room, so you could ask them.
Well, that would be great. That is one of the best suggestions I've heard all day. That would actually be great. I would love to have the opportunity to do that. We can book the caucus room, so to take the onus off of you all for hosting, we'll host. And I would love to have the opportunity to do that because I'm really seeking understanding on why the classifications are so different. I also heard the bell, so I want to be respectful of time. But I will come back on the second round relative to sort of reviewing your full organizational chart and the amount of vacancies. And we know we have vacancies all throughout government, but I really do want to put on the record and ask you all to meet with the OIT group at the school district. They have been unable to get a meeting with you all, and I want to be sure to connect those dots. In fact, I think I have the card over here on my table. So while we go to the next council member with questions, I'll grab the card so we can be sure to make that connection. Okay, I'll wait for the second round. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If I could just add, your office did.
Well, welcome to the second round, Member Gilmore Richardson. You are in the second round. Please proceed.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. That was quick. And so I did find the card. I have it here on my other desk. And they have IT apprenticeship programs under Urban Technology Project with the district. I think I did send this to my team to send to you all because I just got this when I was out at an event with young people, helping them to move into different career positions. And I said, this is interesting. I'm like, you all should meet with the OIT professionals in the city of Philadelphia. I just met with them recently. And so if you could just follow up with that information and ensure you all have a meeting with them and work with OHR to see if there are any potential entry-level positions that you could change the job specs of to sort of get these young people directly in the pipeline for OIT jobs with the city, that would be exceedingly helpful.
Thank you, Councilor. We will do that. Tyler Dawkins from your office has already reached out to us today. We've got that meeting set up. And I'll say that the CIO for the school district is a close colleague of mine, and I'm well aware of all of the effort that her and her team have put in to help those students get into that apprenticeship program. So we definitely have more than one conduit to work with.
Okay, that'll be excellent. And I don't know that this individual works with OIT, but it's probably just with apprenticeships with the district. But at any rate, if you could just review for all of us how you all are working on additional recruitment, because not all of those positions are entry level. Obviously, you have to have advanced certifications, skill sets, and have a level of understanding and experience in OIT. So how are you all recruiting? Do you go to the HBCUs that are in the area like Cheney and Lincoln? Are you recruiting from those colleges and universities as well? And then, and we'll go from there.
So I'll say that going back to the start of my tenure, I took very seriously the diversity of the department and recognizing that, for me coming over from another city agency that I saw within OIT, people who represented the city at multiple levels, both leadership, mid-tier, and entry level. And I wanted to make sure we were doing our best to recruit the best and the brightest from the city, and most importantly, people who would want to join city government and do it out of that sense of wanting to have a mission-driven type of role. And I would often go to as many different technology meetups that I could and say, we're not looking for a lifetime from you. We're looking for the best 2 years of your work, if that's what you can give us. Because quite often there's quite a bit you can accomplish, and I'm sure if you join us, you'll want to stay more than those 2 years. So we have taken any opportunity through the Mayor's Office of Diversity and Inclusion, from the Procurement Office, from the HR Office, anytime that we know about a conference or convening with technology professionals of color, we've sent staff to represent OIT there with a list of the different openings we have and to speak firsthand about their experience. We have worked with the different groups at one time or another around the city that are in the city, like the item, going and doing presentations for them, making sure we understand what types of skills they're upskilling their attendees with, and sharing what our needs are. our need is quite often never at the entry level. It's always at that mid-career level where we're looking for someone who has seasoned technical experience but has a very strong leadership or soft skills. And those have been incredibly hard to find for network engineers, cybersecurity, especially at the highest level. We're still hiring for leadership levels in cybersecurity. As Steve mentioned, the cloud engineering and what we call platform engineers. These are major platforms like our Microsoft at a very deep foundational level of those tools, finding those individuals who are willing to move into the city and willing to uproot their spouses, partners, significant others, and families has been a real challenge for those set of skills. And we're happy to get recommendations on groups to talk to. Haven't gone specifically to the historically Black college groups, but there have been entities like Black IT professionals in tech who had a virtual conference that invited us. We did 3 different sessions with them last year. I had invited the former DEI officer for the city, to speak and be part of that keynote as they had reached out to me. So, we're always open. We did have a dedicated recruitment person who left us early on in the pandemic, and we were really solving for some of the recruitment problems that come up. That the problem where hiring managers get bogged down in their work and sometimes can't get through all of the resumes and do things in a timely manner. That's why we wanted a recruitment specialist to help us organize internally, as well as track and get us lined up for all of those external events. We were now able to move some funding around, and we've hired for a new HR and talent retention executive on our team. And so she's going to be leading up both that DEI effort, recruitment effort, as well as helping the HR team to function optimally.
No, I appreciate that. I'm sorry. I appreciate that so much. But I will respectfully request that you all please recruit from Cheney and Lincoln. They have some of the best and brightest students in this region. They are the closest to historically Black colleges and universities. And whatever partnerships that you all could put together with those 2 colleges and universities will be exceedingly helpful, because they are not far. SEPTA services both of those locations. So it really does not require a ton of relocation expenses. A number of those students are coming from the Philadelphia area already. But I would highly recommend that you all reach out to Cheney and Lincoln. Please update us in writing on what the follow-up is. And I'll put a plug in for one of the best engineering schools, the top engineering HBCU, which is North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, which is in Greensboro. I just have one additional question relative to diversity in your contracting, because I noticed on page 4 of your testimony that you stated your FY2024 projected minority contracting participation rate is 36%. But you also said that that number is lower than the other fiscal years between 20 and 23. But you mentioned that it was really due to a change in the managed services vendor for One Philly. And we know that, we have to continue to work on that system. But if you could just really elaborate on, why it's such a large drop, and then if there are any other contributing factors to the large drop in MBE, WBE, DBE contract participation for your department. And that'll be my last question. Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Member, for that question. Kristinato, would you like to take that? I think that in the statement that I made, I had, now that I realize I forgot to add some more points to that and only left it at the One Philly program, but there are more details that Chris, if you could share with us.
Sure. One of the other factors is under our staff aug contract, which has really, I think, one of our highest participation. We let every department use that, and that drives up our numbers during the year. But we're not certain what other departments will be using the contract for each year. So every year we are kind of conservative in terms of the projection. But if prior years are any indication going forward with other departments' usage of that contract, then I would see the participation going above 40% again. And we also have some capital contracts that may or may not hit next year. They often take longer to negotiate, and so those are not factored in for next fiscal year, but they could also hit.
How many?
2, maybe 3.
Okay, can you just send us that information in writing so that we could have a better understanding of that? Because I think a lot of this stuff is sort of left in this process, and we never get an update until the next year. And then it's, not really helpful for the decisions that we have to undertake over the next couple of weeks. And so if we could get an update on that, that would be exceedingly helpful because, we have to make very important decisions in the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you, CP. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Council Lady, and thank you, Majority Leader Jones, for filling in while we were out at this event. Appreciate it. Any other questions from members for this particular witness? There being none, thank you very much, Mr. Wheeler, for your testimony. As always, please be prepared for a callback. Next up, Mr. McDermott.
Next witness to testify is Ann Fedulin, Planning and Development.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You can please proceed.
Good afternoon, President Clark and members of City Council. I'm Ann Fedulin, Director of the Department of Planning and Development. I'm joined today by several members of senior leadership from both the Department of Planning and Development and the Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation, PHDC. I'm pleased to provide testimony on the department's fiscal year 2024 operating budget. In FY2024, the Department of Planning and Development will continue to work across our many areas of expertise to deliver high-quality programs and services. Our efforts will be informed by deep and intentional engagement with the public. DPD's divisions work in tandem to make Philadelphia a better place to invest in, work, and live. For example, in just the last 2 calendar years, DPD's Development Services Division actively supported 28 major projects with an economic impact of $538 million. The Division of Planning and Zoning makes hundreds of millions of dollars in development investment possible by coordinating thousands of accurate and timely approvals. In FY24, DPD will continue to play a major role in promoting job-creating development investments in Philadelphia. In collaboration with our economic development partners, we will expand upon our success in turning Philadelphia into a hub for cell and gene therapy and other life science innovations. DPD is grateful for City Council's partnership in addressing our affordable housing and neighborhood infrastructure needs. In FY24, DPD will leverage the extraordinary financial investment from the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative, NPI, and the Housing Trust Fund, along with federal and state grants to continue implementing the city's Housing Action Plan. The city's Housing Action Plan serves Philadelphia's most vulnerable households. 7 out of 10 of the households we serve have an income under 30% of the average median income, and 9 of 10 are below 50% of AMI. In FY24, DPD's Division of Housing and Development, coordinating with our partner, PHDC, will repair and improve more homes through our basic system repair and adaptive modification programs, support 1,200 residents to become first-time homeowners through the Turn the Key and Philly First Home programs, finance the preservation and new construction of affordable housing units, help residents avoid foreclosure and eviction, and assist with their rent and utility costs. In addition, PHDC and DPD will continue to work with community-based organizations to expedite the disposition of publicly owned land, remove blight, and improve our neighborhoods. Through MPI, they will also develop new ways to improve neighborhood infrastructure and support small commercial businesses. Also in FY24, DPD will champion equity and inclusion through robust community engagement. The Philadelphia Planning Commission is laying the groundwork for updating the city's comprehensive plan by developing an equitable and inclusive process for ensuring vigorous public participation. Our Division of Housing and Community Development partners with dozens of community-based organizations to inform communities about available services. And additionally, DPD's Historical Commission has launched a cultural resources project to engage diverse races and ethnicities in identifying cultural assets meaningful to their communities, as well as ways to celebrate and preserve them. Before I close, I would like to recognize the dedicated and hardworking employees of the Department of Planning and Development and PHDC. They have provided an extraordinary level of public service during very difficult times. Thank you for the opportunity to testify regarding DPD's proposed fiscal year 2024 budget, and I am available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not going to have a lot of questions for you because I talk to you pretty much every other day.
I was going to say, did I just talk to you?
Yeah. No. So I just got a couple of questions. First one, budget related. In your budget testimony, apparently there is going to be a $160 million increase. Am I reading that right? In your class 200?
Yeah, I'm gonna defer to maybe if I have Paul on the line or Melissa. I think that may be the CDBG-DR money, the disaster recovery money that we're getting as a result of Hurricane Ida.
So that's a one time. I mean, so can you explain that to me? What? Yeah.
You want to take that, Melissa?
Yep, this is Melissa, DHCD, Melissa Long. Yes, it's a one-time allocation of disaster recovery money. We are working across departments. It's to address a range of housing, commercial, infrastructure projects of needs that weren't met in that first initial round of funding that we got from FEMA right after Ida. And there's also 15% of the grant that's for mitigation. And we will draw a lot on what the Department of the Office of Emergency Management and their 5-year mitigation plan.
Okay, so exactly what are we going to spend that money on? And since it's one-time money, is there a carryover, or do we have a timeline on?
We're working on putting together that action plan now, and we are staffing up the staff in the Finance Office of Recovery and Grants. And as you know, HUD has restrictive regulations on the range of projects and programs that can be funded under this money. And we're in the very early stages of putting that together.
What's our timeline?
We're looking to get a draft. HUD has an action plan in a couple months, sort of a draft action plan on what we are working on. They have, as you know, like with the annual action plan for our entitlement money and for the 5-year consolidated plan, the first step is we're completing an unmet needs assessment, and we'll have a much better idea. We're hoping to get that completed shortly. We're working with HUD TA providers on completing that, and we'll have a better sense, I would say, in the next several weeks or month, what that shows.
All right. I hate to keep asking this question. We got $160 million as a result of Hurricane
Ida.
Is that the one where 676 was flooded?
That is correct.
All right. Okay. So you talked about the parameters around limitations on the spending.
Yes. The timeline to spend it. I'm sorry.
That's what I'm,
Yeah. I'll confirm this, but I believe it's 6 years. It's a long timeline because it does require a lot of coordination. But I will, I don't have the regs right in front of me, and I will definitely get back to you with the timeline. And I can tell you there are some grantees that they do allow amendments and extensions. I think it's a great opportunity for us to look at, infrastructure projects and mitigation activities that the city is already currently, looking at. So I will definitely give you the timeline of when it's not like the NSP money, that second allocation that had a very tight timeline of 3 years. It is a much longer timeline.
Okay. So, and if you don't have this information readily available,
Sure.
you can get it to us.
Yep.
So I need you to give us the eligibility, because
Yep.
I heard you reference pretty much staffing positions, but I
Yep.
need to get a sense of what that's going towards. I mean, one
Sure.
of the challenges that we have when we call over is you guys have staff shortages similar to everybody
Yes.
else. So I need to get a sense of,
Yep.
is there some magic mix that's going to allow you to hire people? Because the reason why we have staff shortages is not because we don't want to or we don't have the money. It's that we can't find people to hire. So
Yes.
we have this
Yep.
new money. How are we going
Yeah.
to hire people that we can't hire now? I mean,
Right. And I think part of that is, and I have to just give a kudo here to Melissa, because part of it was when the Office of Housing Community Development converted to civil service, the housing job descriptions had been wiped out of civil service like 20 years ago. So we have been systemically going through and reinstituting all of those job descriptions back into civil service. And so most of that work has now been done, which will make it easier for us, hopefully, to hire going forward now that we actually have housing positions in the civil service system. But you raise a good point. And part of this is we will get a draft plan together probably by the end of June. But we will need to come back to council in the fall because, like the annual action plan and budget, it will require council approval per the charter. And so we do plan to have that detailed plan back in front of you in the fall, but we will get you as much information we can
Yes.
about the general parameters of this money, because it is as frustrated as we get with the regular community development block grant money. This is even more restrictive. So we will definitely get that to you and work with you to figure out how we're going to carry out these activities.
Yep.
all right. So did I hear you? I hate to keep going on this, but I really need to get a perspective. Did I hear you correctly when you suggested that conversion to civil service made it was going to be easier for us to hire people?
No, it made it more difficult because when the conversion happened, because the Office of Housing and Community Development was not civil service for such a long time,
Correct.
civil service had taken away all the housing job descriptions. And so we had to develop all the housing job descriptions and put them in as part of civil service. And that has been about, I would say, 80 to 90% completed now. So that makes it easier now for us to be able to hire, but it took a while to get that work done.
Okay. All right. And I actually didn't agree with that decision, but I wasn't in charge, so I didn't really care what I thought. I just thought it creates such an impediment for us to get people engaged in the process.
Yep.
It did. It was very tricky. We were getting a lot of really qualified social workers, which is great, but that wasn't exactly what we needed to have for health.
Yeah.
I have gray hair.
Earlier statement by a colleague of mine, I have nothing against civil service. I actually, appreciate it. I understand the intent, but it has created a significant impediment on a lot of opportunities in the city of Philadelphia. That's another story.
I would like to add kudos to the current director who's been Mike Sakagny, has been really helpful. And I can't say enough. He's been good in helping us get those positions recreated.
Mike is a person that we work with.
Yep, Mike is great. So it's been much.
But I'm just talking about the original conversion.
Yep. And, Mike's been great.
It was based on politics. It wasn't really based on any real need, but that's another story.
Yep.
The trust fund, $22 million. The current fiscal, is that an anomaly or should we anticipate $22 million?
Is that for the recording fee one? If that's recording fee, it's probably a little bit of anomaly. As we know, we had a lot of real estate transactions happening during the pandemic still. That has fallen off. I think that's a little bit of anomaly because of the real estate activity we were having, and we know that there's been a slowdown. So typically we get, I would say, what, Melissa, maybe 12 to 15 million?
15,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, and we think we're probably headed back towards that direction.
Yes.
Although the good side of that, right, is we now got that dedicated 0.5%. And so that's about $30 million this year in the dedicated housing trust fund money. Yeah. So.
Former councilman, right?
Yeah, that's right. There was a former council person, and then many current council people had to vote for that. So we thank them for that.
Another one of those people on the stage. That we see the Halle Berry's Forum. All right. I'd like to, and if you don't have it handy, can you, when we did the NPI program, one of the reasons that we were so aggressive in terms of the dollars allocated for housing production is, one, obviously the need was more dramatic, but two, we found consistently that we were, based on our limited budget allocation from HUD, block grant diminishment, we needed to be able to fill gaps. And I like to get a sense of the units being produced on an annual basis prior to, and I know it's early, we're only in our second year at NPI, but if you could show me any incremental increase in our ability to fund that gap that we found too consistently, particularly like 4% credits, we would always fall short, so we didn't even bother to use them.
Yeah.
And what the plan is to have more 4% credit deals put on the table.
Yeah, we've been. We can get you the numbers of of what we funded, how much we funded, and what the units are. We'll get that to you. But I would say, frankly, across the board, whether it's a 4% or 9% deal, we typically do our allocation through the RFP process, and then when the project's successful to get tax credits and they put it out to bid, they come back, right? Because there's usually a gap even beyond, and we work with PHFA to make sure we're filling those gaps. And NPI dollars have played a vital role in being able to get those projects that have tax credits, to get them fully funded and to closing. We would be in big trouble if we didn't have those NPI dollars available, because between the interest rates going up and what we're seeing, the interest on construction loans, plus just construction costs going up, and the extended time period that there's been to get some decisions out of PHFA, we've seen costs go up, and NPI has been vital to us. I have to say, last year we got about 50% of the tax credits in the state. This year we got a little bit less, maybe about 40%. But probably a very significant reason why we're able to close those deals and then continue to be successful in getting tax credits is because we've got that NPI money to fill the gaps. But we'll get you specific information.
Okay, my last question. Can you, maybe it's, again, maybe too early, there was a decision made recently to utilize some of the RRR money that was available. And I believe it was going to be for purposes of providing small or short-term construction loans for small contractors that were struggling because of the continued increase in the interest rates and just weren't bankable. Can you tell us where you are?
Yeah, we're in the process of implementing that. What it will do is, again, hopefully we'll be able to provide some of that construction financing at a less interest rate. I'll just tell you today, I saw one that was getting commercial money, and it was north of 7%, right? If we can offer that money at 3 or 4%, that would really help, especially the smaller contractors, be able to access to turn the key opportunities. And we are, putting additional packages out. We've actually also had our first minority developer utilize the accelerator fund also in order to access financing to do some of the turn the key construction. So we're in the process of getting that set up. Hopefully we'll be able to roll that out I would say within the next 30 days or so. So yeah, it's a little too early yet, but we anticipate rolling that out soon. And we may also take a portion of that to provide bridge loans for our tax credit programs as well, because they too are seeing kind of outrageous construction loan interest. So if we can do a piece of that bridge loan, that means our subsidy goes more into actual construction materials and labor, as opposed to just paying interest on other to banks.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I'll come back.
Okay.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gauthier.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, Ms. Fadulin. How are you?
Good. Good to see you, Councilwoman.
Good to see you. First, I want to thank you and your team for just all your hard work and the critical role that you play in housing and neighborhood development across the city. We truly appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate the partnership that we have.
Thank you. I have a few questions for you. First, I'd like to discuss the acquisition budget for the land bank, assuming tax foreclosure sales resume sometime this fiscal year. I remember the acquisition budget came from MPI in FY2023, but I wasn't able to locate any acquisition budget in the FY2024 budget detail. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on this either way, because I think we should at least plan for an acquisition budget. And, in fact, I would question whether last year's allotment of $3.5 million is too little. Since tax sales have been on hiatus for the entire pandemic, I have to imagine that there's a huge backlog of interest in assemblage opportunities and other types of acquisitions. And the price tag keeps going up the longer these properties remain in delinquency. And at least I'm hoping that at least some of the acquisition budget can come from the general fund because MPI is limited to acquisition for affordable housing purposes. And although that's critically important, we also want to make space for other community-minded uses like community gardens and open spaces. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. We do not have an allocation of acquisition in the general fund budget in FY2024. We do anticipate utilizing MPI dollars should that share sales resume. And I think at that point, we'd have to figure out what are the lists of properties that we want to go off after, what do we think that amount is, and determine how much from MPI that we can utilize to use for acquisition. I don't think that we necessarily have to be limited to acquisition for affordable housing because the purpose of MPI is kind of overall neighborhood revitalization. And I think we could make the argument that if we were acquiring properties for business expansion and it's a small business in the community, or for a community garden or something like that, that contributes to overall community well-being. And so I think we could figure out how to make those connections.
Do you think it's smart to plan for something in the budget? I mean, assuming that we're coming out.
I wouldn't, like we said, we had the allocation of about $3.5 million from the first year of MPI, which obviously we did not spend that way because share sales did not open up. I think we are anticipating a similar amount in year 2 of MPI. However, if there are certain properties that you are definitely interested in pursuing through share sale and you want to provide those over to our land management staff, they can take a look at those and kind of, start to do some budgeting about whether we think that $3.5 million is adequate, or should we start to look at, could we put some additional dollars there?
Okay, thank you very much for that. Also regarding vacant lands, can you tell us if there are any proposed budget increases for land care, insurance, and physical safety infrastructure? In different ways, each of these are essential to ensure that we are not overburdening communities where there is publicly owned vacant land, so that land doesn't become an eyesore. And I'm quite sure that you all have never had your ideal capital and maintenance budget. Even when, we know also that even when there is a proposed disposition, it can take years to finalize. And in the meantime, I think it makes sense for every vacant lot that the city owns to have proper lighting and fencing and security cameras and maintenance at least every 2 weeks. Are those costs factored into the budget? And if not, can we plan for that? And how much would it cost?
Yeah, so our money going to the land care program is the same as FY23, I believe. I don't have it right here in front of me. We can get that to you, but I think it's about 2.8 for land care. I know it's north of 2 million, and then I think it's 2.8 or 2.9 for land care, and then I think there's another 2 million in there for the same day pay program, right?
And
which also is used to do land care as well. And then in the land bank budget, there's only about $500,000 for maintenance. And so to your point, is it sufficient to clean and green and fence and light every vacant lot in our inventory? No, it is not. And I know that you had raised that during, I think, public properties hearing as well. So we've been working on getting the response together for that because public inventory is public inventory as far as we're concerned. But so I think that information is in process to get to you, but we can certainly get more detail to you.
That would be great. And just an analysis of, if there needs to be more based on the amount of land that we have. And I can just tell you, it's embarrassing to go into my neighborhoods and have the city properties be the worst properties, right?
Yeah.
I think we have to be setting the.
And we actually put some, we had a Fuse fellow, I can't remember honestly the year, I want to say like 2017, 2018. And we put some of this information together about what it would cost to bring every lot up just up to a baseline of maintenance, right? And so we're working to update those numbers and get them to you. I just want to make a point about land care, that land care doesn't just address publicly held property, that there's also a lot of privately held lots that land care maintains. And then, of course, there's the CLIP program. And I'll be honest with you, that's not in my budget. So I'm not sure how much money they get. But, that's really kind of a call and response. If someone says there's a problem, they go out and they mow the lot or whatever, whereas land care is a little bit more of a long-term maintenance program. But I doubt that either of those programs have the funding that they need to take care and maintain every vacant lot.
Okay. Thank you. Lastly, I guess for this round, related to insurance, we're being told at the Land Bank Board that community groups and individuals are now going to be required to have commercial grade insurance to keep their garden leases on public land during fiscal year 24. This is going to be a huge barrier, as I'm sure you know, and on the heels of the city's urban ag plan being released, this will likely discourage gardening for what I assume does not actually translate to a huge cost savings for the city. So can you talk through how much money this would actually save the city, if any, and what sort of research has been done that makes the city confident that that it's possible for all these individuals to obtain insurance policies on their own?
Sure. I think we have Angel Rodriguez here, who's our Senior Vice President for Land Management. I believe that this is basically a pass-through from land management insurance, that their insurance company is requiring this, but I want Angel to respond in case there's any more detail he can provide.
Good afternoon, Angel Rodriguez from Land Management at PHDC. Yes, this change occurred because when we were renewing our insurance, we had to notify our insurance company that we were issuing license agreements, and then they required that we would, to maintain our insurance policy, that anyone who was entering the properties for PRA or land bank also have insurance that would additionally insure the agencies and the city. So we did do an extensive round with our insurance carrier to see if there was a policy out there where, say, typically what you'll find for a person who's looking for an individual garden agreement, that they have homeowners insurance. And if there was a product where you could get, you could just augment your homeowners insurance, in which case they could just have an additionally additional policy added to their homeowners insurance to insure us. Apparently, there is no product along that line, so they just told us that it would be something along a commercial product that would be required from our insurance company. And the insurance company is basically kind of outlines what our limits are so that we could maintain it. And just to give the council an idea of what it costs, it's about $530,000 to $540,000 a year to maintain our general liability insurance for land. And most of our inventory is vacant land.
Okay. And do we have a sense of how much it would cost our garden groups to get these policies?
No, they did part of the problem was that our insurance carrier couldn't identify a product. So if we had identified a product, we would be able to tell you what the price would be. But each person who wanted to access the property through a license agreement would have to go and look for a policy. And unfortunately, I can't say that it's widespread. So that's, I couldn't give you a number on that.
Okay. Given the fact that, we do think that urban gardens are really important and these are important partners for us, does it make sense for us to do more exploration about how our partners can meet this goal?
Yeah, I think part of the issue becomes when you look at community gardens, well, not so much community gardens, but say our side yard program. If somebody wants to acquire a property that's adjacent to their home, we tend to actually try to sell that property. Insurance is not an issue when we're actually disposing of the property and transferring title. I think when you're talking about individual garden agreements, the exact, what differentiates a side yard from a garden agreement, individual garden agreement, is that the vacant lot can be on the same block or 1,000 feet from your home. Mm-hmm. So it's not adjacent. So under the current disposition policy, we cannot convey the property to them. It doesn't qualify as a side yard. So
I understand.
They would have to, my point being that, one way around that is to convey the property. So if you sell the property, insurance is really not the issue. We don't require insurance to sell property. If it remains in our inventory and you access the property while we still own it, that's when insurance is an issue.
I see. I think what I'm asking is, before we kind of lay this policy out there for the gardens, can we do further exploration about how feasible this is for our partners, and just make sure that we understand that this is a benchmark that they can meet? And we don't have to hash that all out in the hearing, but if you wanted to connect offline on that, I'd be very interested. But I think it makes sense to, for us to figure out, because these are critical spaces in our neighborhoods, as you know.
Yes, by all means, we can do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Lady. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President, and good to see you, Ann and Melissa. And thank you all for your work and for the opportunity to work together over the last couple of years on issues that you all know I deeply care about. So I'm going to start there. You know where I'm going. You already know where I'm going. So I'm going to start with Tangle Titles. If you all could just provide us with an update on the timeline around the creation for the community grant program for Tangle Title work through MPI. And again, I got to start with a thank you to CP for your work with MPI so that we could greatly and vastly expand the Tangle Title work in the city of Philadelphia, and for so many of the families that were noted in the Pew report, of which we know there are many more than that. And so if you could just give us an update on the Tangle Title Fund, sort of how much is going out and what's the update on the community grant program.
Mm-hmm.
Great, and good to see you. And this money has been really awesome. We've been working with VIP and the partners, and we're doing a pilot with 3 of the NACs, Achievability, GPass, and Strawberry Mansion. And we're amending those NAC contracts and the scope. And I can believe your staff too, and council president staff, we have been working together in that, and I'm happy to share the final scope for starting that pilot in the next couple weeks, and we'll let that run through the end of the NAC program years, October 1 through September 30th, and then the intent would be to expand that out to other NACs. So really super excited to meet with you and your staff on what that scope looks like. And I can also get you, I don't have right in front of me, the Tangled Title Fund. What I can say is thanks to the increase with NPI dollars, there are more homeowners served. And so the demand for the fund has increased dramatically. And I'll be happy to share those figures with you as well.
That would be great. And then in addition to that, will we spend all of the money that's in the Tangled Title Fund this year? Like, will there be any left over?
I believe so. I believe that's where we're at. And so we would be, yes, but let me, I do want to make sure that I'm giving you fully accurate figures, but I do think there's much greater demand for that fund, and it is anticipated that it's will be spent. Yep.
Sure. And so, if we could just get an update on sort of who utilized that money, what areas they were represented, so we better understand where we need to target based on, and we can overlay the data from the Pew report, so we recognize what areas we need to better focus on relative to marketing these efforts and getting the word out so we can help as many families as possible. That'll be helpful. Was there ever a cap per applicant for the fund? Or it's just based on what their need is?
I believe that there is a cap, with the caveat that based on changing conditions and need, it could be raised. But again, I will get all that exact information to you.
Okay, that'll be great. But yeah, we can just get a constant update on that, because I've gone so many places and people ask about that. And anything else that maybe I could start to take around with me when I go. So that they know who to be in contact with. Because that is really something that we want to get on top of, particularly with what's happening with the property assessments, and also with the work we've done on helping individuals to qualify for LOOP if they can prove equitable ownership. So we gotta work on that to sort of help people stay and maintain their properties and stay in their homes and keep their generational wealth. Really quickly, I also wanted to ask a question about whole home repairs, because that's something I deeply care about, and am thankful for Senator Staval for all of his work and his partnership, and just for leading the way on that effort. If you all could give us an update on the Whole Home Repairs Act funding, sort of where we are in process. I know we did our county application already. And then if you could detail sort of how the funds are being allocated across the 3 major components of the program, home repair for homeowners, home repair for the landlords, and then specifically on what will be done on the workforce development side.
Sure. I don't see Dave Thomas on the call, and the PHDC was the applicant, but a big chunk of the dollars are going to the Energy Authority. But I think I saw Kathy Califano show up, and maybe she can provide some detail about where we are with Whole Home.
Great.
Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Califano, First Deputy at the Department of Planning and Development. Councilwoman, we have a contract with the Department of DHCD, the state agency. So we're finalizing the contract between PHDC and with DHCD for the funds to flow to Philadelphia. In process is the contract between PHDC and the Philadelphia Energy Authority. In the meantime, I can give you a quick overview of what the funds are going to. So funding is going to support at PHDC a new small landlord program. We're estimating we'll do about 100 loans through that program. The BSRP and AMP program, adding more money to those existing programs so we're able to help additional households. The Energy Authority, through its Build to Last program, will get funding through this. And the Energy Authority has several workforce programs that will also receive funding. And I can go through those quickly if you'd like.
That would be great, because see, I'm taking notes on everything that you're saying. And what I thought I heard, and I'll be respectful of the clock, but I'm going to come back. But what I thought I heard was new small landlord program. It'll only be 100 people. Can you give us amounts? 100 loans. Can you give us amounts for each category?
Sure. We have a PowerPoint. If you'd like, I can send that over to you after the hearing today that has all of the details in it. Might be able to.
That would be great.
Yes.
Because you got to understand, and I just want to underscore this, and I heard the bell, and I'll circle back. But a lot of people are talking about this program. I was at a community meeting last night with 75 people, Councilman Jones, REH, and they're all talking about the whole home repairs program. They want to know when it's coming online, sort of how much it will be, sort of what the overall city capacity will be. Because, we're all kind of selling this program outside of the BSRP and work that we have, this council has worked to increase funding for. So I really want to understand sort of the scope of this. I was even out in the community 2 weeks ago, and someone stopped me, and we wound up sitting on their porch for 30 minutes talking about whole home repairs. And, she was just talking about the type of repairs she would want to get if she gets whole home repair because of the age of the house. And so we just want to understand the scope so we understand how many people we could actually help in the city of Philadelphia. And so when I heard the 100 loans, I'm like,
Well, I do think we have to manage expectations here, right?
Okay.
Because the total amount of money coming to the city for everything related to homes is a little, I think around 21 million. Of that, 4 million is going to PHDC to do additional adaptive mod and basic system repair, right? And so then and we'll get you the breakdown of the numbers like Kathy said, but there's a piece of that then that's going to the small landlord. Of the 21 million, I think about 14 million is going to the Energy Authority. Is that accurate, Kathy?
The Energy Authority is receiving 7 million for the Build to Last program, but some of that may actually go to PHDC because in Build to Last, they rely on PHDC to do the major construction activities.
Right.
1.3 is going to workforce development programs.
Can you break that down too? Oh, I heard the clock. Let me be respectful of the next round.
We'll get you the whole budget. We'll get the whole budget over to you so you can see it. The point I'm trying to make is it's $20 to $21 million, and it's going to small landlord program. It's going to home repair. It's going to Build to Last, and it's going to workforce development, right? So when you start to break that down, it's kind of smaller chunks of money. And that's why you're probably going to not see big numbers that sort of blow your socks off. Because in the overall scheme of things, right, we just had the report that came out saying we need, $3.5 billion worth of repairs, right? And we got 20 million. We love the 20 million. We are thrilled to get the 20 million. We'll take all the millions that we can get. But it isn't, the problem is now resolved, but definitely we'll take all the money we can get. And our goal is to get it out there, get it spent, get it into people's homes so that hopefully the state can turn to Philly and say, look what Philly did with the money. Let's give them some more money. So, but we'll get you all the detail on it.
Okay, and I'll come back on the second round around workforce development specifically, and then climate and EJ as you all are planning. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Lady. Kathy, you said 7 million for the Energy Authority?
7.7 for the Build to Last program and 1.3 for the Workforce Development program.
To the Energy Authority.
To the Energy Authority, right. So they're
Right,
a
but what's the
partner
total
in-
amount going to the Energy Authority?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the number we agreed on.
Yeah, I think the total number to the Energy Authority is bigger.
So, point of clarification, because I think this is important, and I see you, CP. You're saying that some of that 7.7 is going to be passed through PEA to go to PHDC before the major construction part. So can we get a breakdown and understanding of that? Because I don't think that that matches up with what we originally anticipated.
So in total, right now, 9 million is going to the Energy Authority of the 21 million. And in addition to that 9 million, and you're correct, some of it is going for administrative cost, but that is in the contract between PHDC and the Energy Authority, and that's not finalized yet. So I didn't include that number in the piece. At PHDC, some of it is going to basic systems repair, AMP, and to the new small landlord program. So there's 5 million for the rental improvement program for the landlords, and 5 million that goes to BSRP and AMP together.
No, I understand
That's how we get
that,
to
but
the 21 million.
I understand that, but I think what we're saying is how much of what is going to PEA is being passed through for the major. Sorry, CP.
Thank you. Can I So, can I get a total for the Energy Authority? But there was a conversation, multiple conversations. I just want to make sure that the commitment we made to Senator Saval and throughout those conversations is kept, because we will be looking for some additional dollars. And that's not the number, the 7 million, and then this whole issue with respect to the training program.
Right.
Can you just get us what? Yeah.
Yes, I will send you the I will send you the information, the budget.
Because they asked for initially a little bit too much from our perspective. They were asking for like 14 of the total. There was an agreement, I thought, to ratchet that down, but it was way more than $7 million.
Correct.
So can you send us what's being proposed?
Yes. And NPI home improvement programs are primarily funded with, in the scheme of things, there's $73 million going to home improvement programs. A lot generated by, thank you, City Council, and your support.
Yeah, I understand. But I know that,
whole homes.
There's back and forth about who should get all the money. PHDC wants all the money. Energy Authority wants all the money. There has to be a balance, right? If we plan on proceeding with additional requests for resources. And I told PHDC folks, look, you guys continue to get NPI money on a consistent basis, more than you've ever gotten. So you can't have all the money and similarly the Energy Authority. We need to get a sense of where that money's going, right? So,
and
can you get
at the table, the partners are working very closely together. It's been a really good partnership. I think the Energy Authority would share that to date.
Just make sure that
and streamlining.
That City Council is a part of the partnership in the conversations, because it's kind of like, frankly speaking, on us. We give our word, then that reflects on us. All right.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman. Are you? That's right. I think we're going next to Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Gilmore Richardson, for being on this topic that means so much to everybody in Philadelphia, but particularly the 4th District. When we look at the breakdown of dollars, we don't do a lot of government-funded single-family new construction, but we do a heck of a lot of basic systems repair and those kinds of projects that preserve some of the old housing infrastructure in my district. So I'm grateful to you and your team for that support and influx of resources. What I'd like to ask about is your affordable housing plan. I think you mentioned it earlier, but I would love to, first of all, get a sense of where we're going in today's demand for workforce housing and today's demand for affordable housing in light of the market pressures that are being put upon us because of just everybody's trying to, build more housing in the city of Philadelphia. So what I'd like to see is over the last 4 or so years, what has been the inventory of affordable housing, and how is it being maintained? Is it up? Is it down? And more importantly, as importantly, where is it going? Because what was once affordable housing neighborhoods is not. And so if we could develop a map of that migration, if you would, from urban centers to, other neighborhoods, if we could get a sense of that, I think that would be helpful. And then number two, before we submit it to CDBG, give some input. I know we have hearings, but I think we all do better when we have candid conversations with each other to talk about what we see in our districts. And whether you're talking about President Clark, whether you're talking about Kenyatta Johnson, but now you start to talk about Jones, because Jamie Goodyear, obviously, but it's pressing westward. And so what we can do to preserve affordable housing is near and dear to my heart. So if we can, who is your team that develops the affordable housing plan you present to HUD?
So that the plan is presented or prepared by the team at DHCD. So Melissa Long heads that up with her deputy Mark Dodds, and then PHDC, Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation, is our implementation arm of that plan, right? So they run things like Turn the Key and Philly First Home and basic system repair, and the tax credit projects run through them, both preservation and new production. And so those are really our agencies that we rely on for our affordable housing piece. And Melissa, you want to tell where we are with the annual action plan?
Yep. So that we're in the process, Mark and his team and all of the partners. And as you remember, it also includes Commerce and Office of Homeless Services. We are there preparing the draft annual action plan, which this time of year we presented. There was the needs assessment in March. And the draft plan will be submitted to council in early May. And so we're working on that.
So my
Councilman, if you want to meet with us or have a conversation about specific concerns you've got, please reach out, and we're happy to have those conversations.
One of them on the record is, as we age out of existing multi-unit deals that happened in the 60s, and the owners are now either facing being underwater because the rents don't meet the maintenance, and the residents often are living in substandard accommodations because they can't raise the rents. We need to be talking about, in the case of Brith Shalom, in the case of the Pavilion, in the case of naturally occurring retirement communities, how we either help them with these loans or help them to sell and transfer over some of that to people who might, for the write-off, want to maintain properties like this. And so that strategy, in the case of the Penn Win, we went from low to affordable apartments to now market rate. And I have friends that were in the low and affordable housing, and I have friends that are in the market rate, but they're different people, different incomes. And I see a trend where you're starting to see these properties and the owners wanting to flip these properties to market rate. So we need to get ahead of this issue. It's not just my district. I would imagine it's in Cindy Bass's district. I would imagine it's in, I would say, Member Phillips' district. And so we need to be in middle neighborhoods mindful and make that a part of our plan to HUD.
Yeah, we can agree with you more. We're already looking at particularly projects aging out of their tax credit compliance over the next 3 years to identify what projects those are and come up with a specific strategy around each one of them. But again, if there's ones that you have specific concerns about, we're happy to talk with you about that. One of the other things we've been trying to do is push the federal government to take lessons learned from the rent assist program, right? A voucher is a voucher, but sometimes people just need a few $100s a month to get through. They don't need the full voucher and all the stuff that comes with that. And so trying to figure out how, and also talking to these owners about recapitalizing, particularly projects that are coming out of HUD mortgages where it's a different ownership structure than a tax credit project. And sometimes they're leery about the tax credit structure, but that's really the vehicle now to recapitalize. But again, if there's specific ones that you are concerned about, we're happy to sit down with you and have our staff take a look and see what we can do. And we've also been working with the Housing Authority on that because right now they're sort of the only operating subsidy option that we have, and we know that they don't have enough operating subsidy for the need. But the more we can work in tandem and in cooperation together, the better shot we have at preserving these units.
And finally, I want us to pay attention to AMI. AMI is, we did the Wynn Ballroom. It's a beautiful facility, 53 units, right down the street from my colleague. But there were a influx of retirees that sold off single family homes and ran right into those more modest apartments. But they are on fixed income. They are on pensions that don't have cost of living increases. And the AMI each year is forcing them to a critical point where a retired police officer sold her house, moved in, and is now considering moving back with her kids because of those gradual upticks in rent. So I don't know how we work with our HUD folks and to start to, it is unfair to me that we factor our income with Bucks in Montgomery County because they make so much more per household. So
right. Yeah, AMI oftentimes has almost nothing to do with Philadelphia incomes. And you're right, we're seeing the same thing, that folks are getting priced out of tax credit rental. And so we had just started a shallow rent program just as the pandemic hit. And so we are providing some shallow rent opportunities to our current low-income housing tax credit providers because people can't afford to pay the tax credit rent, let alone the market rent. And I do think that's a conversation, we know that the state's got some more housing money and with the feds about we need options, right? That's really what we need in order to keep people in these units. So yeah, we're again happy to have those conversations.
Well, thank you for being sensitive to these issues and look forward to working with you and your team. Oh, and last thing, I love the planning department. They never agree with me, but usually they are right. So you tell them I said that. All right.
Well, we're happy to have those dialogues so that we can be both right and you can be right and we can all agree with each other.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman, we're not supposed to acknowledge in a public way that we're wrong.
That's right. You're right.
I just want the record to show it wasn't me.
Do that before we come on 64.
You got it. All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gaudier for round two.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to discuss how we can get broader support for our mostly volunteer registered community organizations who play such an essential role in community notification and engagement related to zoning variances. In recent years, Council has advocated for legal assistance, insurance coverage, and I'd like to add more technical assistance with particularly challenging cases on top of those important things. Do you agree that the city should be providing this type of assistance to our RCOs? And if so, are any of these part of your budget proposal for FY24?
So we provide through our planning staff, we do provide a lot of technical assistance to the RCOs. We are now, I think, close to or maybe even north of 300 RCOs. So there are, it's kind of overwhelming to manage that many RCOs, and the staff really does try to do as much as they can with technical assistance. And we do have in our budget some additional staff for planning, and so hopefully we will be able to do more outreach. In reference to the insurance and legal, frankly, I have to defer to the law department and risk management on those. I do not have any money in my budget regarding those aspects, but we do have dollars in the budget to bring some additional staff people on board, with the intent of being able to provide more community connected service.
Is this a conversation we've ever had with the law department?
I honestly don't know. I assume when the legislation was being discussed, there was some conversation with the law department, but I'm not aware.
Okay. Would you be willing to engage the law department on the need for, do you think it's a need? I guess I'll start there.
I'm not an RCO. So again, I'm happy to participate in conversations.
Okay. Thank you. Given all that housing counselors are being asked to do to minimize tenant evictions, stabilize existing homeowners, and help BIPOC home buyers purchase their first homes, do you support the city providing an additional $2.2 million in funding to hire new and retain existing housing counselors?
Yes, I'm going to talk to Melissa about what we're already doing to try to increase the capacity and the support for the housing counseling agencies. Mm-hmm. Melissa, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. We have in the budget the additional $2 million that was allocated last year, right?
Okay.
Yep. And then we are also, I'm also pleased to report that, the eviction diversion operations, which many of the counseling agencies and our legal services and Cora Good Shepherd, we were able to do some reprogramming to get another year of CDBG, the coronavirus funding for them. So that is going to stay intact. And then we are in discussion, we're looking at the amount of available funds at a percentage increase across the board for agencies, to account for, the work that they do.
Yeah, and I think everyone that I've talked to is extremely grateful for the bump we were able to give last year. But I do think based on, what you all were just discussing with Majority Leader Jones and just everything that is happening in the housing market, the need is great and they're doing their best to scramble and try to meet the needs. Yep. So to the extent that we could, help them with that, help them even more. It would be.
We are totally on board. We couldn't do this work without them.
Great.
Yep.
And then lastly, I wanted to talk more a little bit about life sciences development. In your development services priorities, you reference wanting to develop, quote, a critical mass of inclusive growth in our life sciences sector. This is an extreme or a big priority for me as well, since so much of this activity is happening in the 3rd District. So could you talk more about your FY24 goals related to this?
Yeah, so we were doing this in close cooperation with both the Chamber of Commerce, our Commerce Department, and the Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation. I think it's really an effort to come together to to have a coordinated effort about attracting life sciences and that industry to Philadelphia, and then working to ensure that it is a benefit to as many as our folks as possible. One of the key things about life sciences that I think people don't understand is a huge portion of the jobs are not necessarily PhD. Can't help myself. PhD. I can't say it. I can't do it. I can't. I just can't. PhD. Holders, doctors. Let me just say that.
Yes,
all right,
sure.
It's not just doctors or high-level scientists or things like that. It's actually a lot of them are lab technicians and things like that. Jobs that require a high school diploma or maybe an associate's degree, right? So there's been conversations with the Community College of Philadelphia about enhancing their program. Montgomery County Community College has a really good program. And so we're trying to figure out how do we work together to maybe get more of a training center here. And, we had ARPA H come down from the feds, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago, and just toured the infrastructure that we have, both at the Navy Yard and in University City. And they couldn't believe they were really could not believe how far we've come in having the whole spectrum. We're also looking at our zoning code, right? Because it often falls under manufacturing. Well, our manufacturing in an industrial district is not the type of manufacturing that they're doing in life sciences. And so are there things that we can do to make sure that we get better projects and better developments because they're meeting more of the office type of district as opposed to an industrial district, which may have like really significant loading requirements or parking or things like that. Not that we don't want any parking, but we're oftentimes, as you know, in your district where these projects are going is they're not really going on heavy industrial areas. They're going into the heart of communities. And so it's looking at all of that. And the mayor's policy office was involved with the new governor working to try to have a state fund that would help attract those businesses here as well. So it's really an across the board effort about trying to attract them here and then making sure that our residents are prepared to take those jobs. Again, because they're jobs across the spectrum. They're not just these very high level a doctor or scientific jobs. There's lots of job opportunities here, and we really want to make sure that we're unlocking all of that.
Yeah, I am right there with you. I'm very excited about that. We know how to do this. We've developed very specialized certificate programs in the area of advanced technology at the new CCP site. We can do it for life sciences as well. And so I'm just really interested in being a part of this conversation that focuses not only on the real estate and on the development, but on making sure that our residents are really poised to take on these opportunities.
That's exactly on target. That's exactly it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Lady. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Council President. So I will submit a few of the additional questions I have for the record, and particularly if you could just, even if you don't have the amount right away, if you could go over sort of the workforce development portion of whole home repairs, that would be helpful. And then I wanted to talk about the Office of Sustainability's capital funding. How much does OOS receive in capital funding? And has their funding been restored to the pre-pandemic levels?
So I'm going to defer the whole homes, the workforce piece again to Kathy, and we'll get you the detail on that because those programs are actually being run through the Energy Authority. But the Office of Sustainability is not in my budget. So I'm not sure what
capital.
So let me let Kathy answer whole homes and Office of Sustainability. Oh, Marissa, can you respond to the Office of Sustainability? I can't say that.
Yeah, so they are funded in the capital budget. I don't have the number off the top of my head for that, but we can get back to you in writing. with the amounts both in the going forward and what they were pre-pandemic, so that you'll have both. And they have their hearing next week. We'll make sure that they come prepared with that information.
Okay. But the one thing I can say really quickly, Councilwoman, is that we have been redoing some of our office space on the 13th floor, and we share that floor with sustainability, and they have been fabulous about helping us redo the lighting on the floor so that it's the energy efficient lighting and everything like that. So it's been a great partnership with them.
Okay, that'll be great, because I'll certainly be interested in not only the work that they are doing and the funding they receive, relative to capital funding, but also thinking about how members of your department who have specific expertise and or knowledge of climate planning or climate adaptation, climate mitigation, EJ, climate resiliency, how you incorporate that in your planning from a staffing perspective. Because I think this will be exceedingly important as we move forward. And we saw what happened when we had the major flooding and sort of the age of the flood maps. This is coming up more and more. How are cities and municipalities staffing up with individuals who have a level of real expertise and experience in climate planning and adaptation work and resiliency work? So I wanted to ask you all what you're doing there, how you're planning, and then the balance of the questions that I have, I will submit for the record, and then I just have around the EJ work, and then I have one more question around the Historical Commission.
All right, really quickly around the sustainability piece. I mean, we share the floor with sustainability, so we really rely on them. And, Liz Lankenau's just come over now. We have a great relationship with her. And when we do our comprehensive planning and all of that, we connect in with them. They have probably more expertise than we do in that regard. But again, as we bring on new staffing, we can certainly talk about expanding the potential for us to have more of that expertise in-house, because I agree with you, right? We need to be much more proactive about resiliency planning and all of that because that's what we're all going to be dealing with. We're already dealing with it now, and it's not getting any better. So we agree with you on that.
Right. It'll really just be exacerbated. And I bring it up because it's a topic that has come up in some of our last several conversations with the Local Government Advisory Committee for EPA. And relative to some of the funding opportunities that will come directly from EPA and the federal government in the future, a lot of that work, they will be asking questions around some of the staffing in municipalities and who they have that really have a knowledge of climate planning work and climate resiliency work on staff already, sort of in city government. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Eleanor, you want to chime in on anything about the planning staff?
Just that is climate and sustainability. Even though we have a separate office, we do have some staff on that focus on that, and we're always taking into consideration. And if you want to give us more, we'll take it.
Knew that was coming.
But if you're also having meetings around that with sustainability, we're happy to participate in those meetings as well.
Okay, that'll be great. I hear the bell. I heard the bell 3 times, but I will not come back. I will submit the balance of the questions, but just wanted to know about the Historical Commission and how you all are really working towards the preservation of our landmarks, but particularly some of the Black and Brown landmarks. We've received a lot of outreach, I think, just because of a couple of things that have been going on in the city, that we're really not doing a good job of preservation, particularly in the Black and Brown community, where we've lost several things over the last several years. So I just wanted to put that on the record and just ask for a quick response, and then I'll submit the balance.
So I'm just going to say really quickly, we'll get you detail on the Energy Authority and the workforce programs for HOHOM. So you'll get that. And then Historic will also get you information. Martha Cross just jumped on. So Martha, maybe you can just do a brief on what we're doing about our cultural resources survey and that whole piece.
Sure. Thank you. Martha Cross, Deputy Director of the Division of Planning and Zoning. Thank you, Councilwoman, for that question. I'd say we're working in 3 areas right now. And I'd love the opportunity offline to sort of tell you more about those opportunities and get your input if you're really interested. I would say John Farnham has been working really hard within the current historical commission and the local register to get more buildings and places that represent Black history on the local register. And I think we've seen some significance, especially around the Christian Street, Black Doctors Row, and Sun Ra's house, to name a couple of significant places. But we're also working on a cultural resources survey plan and pilot project, because we want to be sure that when we talk about telling history, telling all Philadelphians' histories, that we don't just look at historical resources, we look at cultural resources, both tangible and intangible. So this survey plan is going to help us create a methodology and a framework for working with communities to decide what needs to be preserved and how, and what our role is in that process. So that work is underway, and we should be starting a pilot project later this summer. So you'll be hearing more about that process, but I'm also happy to get you up to speed and have a conversation about that work.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you, Council President. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
I'm happy to just keep carrying with you, Councilwoman.
Clerk recognizes Councilman Spiller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Hey, Ann, how are you? I know it's been a long day.
Good, Councilman. Yeah.
And
haven't talked to you in minutes.
I know. Two things. One is, and I know it's a challenge, but we've been hearing from a lot of people that are going out looking for variances, need to go to the ZBA, that the timeline, even expedited, is upwards of 6 months. And understanding that's an expedited process, maybe 8 to 9 months without expedited processes, and which is building a challenge. Now we know the ZBA is still virtual, and the idea would be: is it possible to consider, or what we would need to do to consider, to see if it's maybe 1 day a month, add additional hearings to try to catch up, so our timeline is not as long.
Right. Yeah, so I'm going to defer to Martha in a minute, but the great news is that means there's still a lot of development going on in our city, right? Which is yay. But we do realize that that's a challenge, and we want to foster that development and get those economic dollars in and those jobs and all that benefit. So we know that we've got to make some improvements to the whole process. So Martha, you want to talk about what we're doing?
And real quick, it's not only new developments, right? It's people maybe who needed variances,
doing some renovation,
renovations,
exactly, trying to get a business, all sorts of things.
An extension to their property, so forth and so on. Okay.
Thank you,
Hi,
Councilman,
Martha.
for that. Hi, how are you? Thank you for that question. Yeah, we do know that and agree that it's a challenge right now, that the timelines are certainly much longer than we'd like them to be. One of the things that we are working towards is making sure that people are better prepared for their hearings, because one of the big challenges we have now are the number of continuances that we see. Applicants who are unprepared to go forward on the day of their hearing, they've taken a spot on that agenda that can't be filled at the last minute. So one of the things we're going to be rolling out in the short term are improved communications to make sure that applicants, especially our pro se applicants, so the homeowners who don't need to be represented by attorneys, are prepared and know what they will be facing when they get to the hearing. So we hope that will help to improve timelines a bit, if we can get folks ready for their hearing on the first try and not have to come back. We can also look at other options, and we are certainly open to discussions. Happy to have conversation with you offline about some other opportunities, either how to get the short-term backlog kind of moved through, and then maybe in the longer term, are there some things that we might change about the process
Is it
to just kind
possible
of
to look at?
through?
Is it possible in some way, and we could talk offline, but it's possible to look at some way in that, can we group a bunch of these together? There's a whole bunch that are simple, easy, supported, simple variances that, all right, why are we waiting 9 months for these? We could do 50 of these in one day, right?
Yeah.
And have all them on a Wednesday or something. And then I think it would really help streamline that, because you throw them in with some of the other ones that take an hour, some of them take longer. But there are some that are so simple that we could look at them and see that they're supported by the community, they're supported by the council office, they're supported by planning, and it's just should be something that should be a paperwork that could be done. I mean, that may be something that we could throw into an extra day or something and do all them and clear them out. So, I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it. We just have to be able to work together to figure it out, because it's great that we have a lot of work and some of them, but it also could end up deterring work in the future. People said, I'm not waiting
You're
9
exactly
months.
right. No, we want to get this moving as well.
And
Yeah,
the
I
other
think
thing
that's
that
one of the
happens
challenges,
well,
Councilor,
the
that
other
you
thing that
identified.
happens is that people decide, you know what, I'm not going for a variance. I'm just going to do it and hope I never get caught, and ends up doing the work without getting it. And then we don't want that to
Don't
happen
give anybody
either.
any ideas,
I'm
Councilman.
not giving them ideas. I just know the reality.
Yeah, I think
So that is something I think we need to look at too. I'd be happy to work with both of you to see how we could do that. So thank you, because and we understand the ZBA is an independent body and they make their own decisions, and sometimes we're happy with them and sometimes we're not. But at least get them heard, and then we could
Right.
discuss.
We all want the same thing. We
results.
want to get these cases through, and we want to keep this going. So yes, we're happy to have ongoing conversations.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Do we have any additional questions by members of this committee? There being none, it appears. Ms. Fadulin, as always, please be prepared for callbacks, and as usual, I'll be calling you every other day about something.
I was going to say.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it. Thanks.
No additional questions. Our members, there being none, the committee will stand in recess until Tuesday, April 18th at 10 a.m., at which time we will reconvene in a remote manner using Microsoft's Teams. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.